What is going on, you guys? It's Patrick, otherwise known as Scotty, and I got a crazy thing to tell you. So, yesterday I was driving into work. It was early, like 4:15 in the morning, 4:20, something like that. About a mile from the exit where I get off to go to work. My truck goes haywire. The lights, I got I got a parking brake sensor light. I've got traction control light. It says that my hood is open. Just going bonkers. Just alarms keeps going on, off, on, off. I'm like, what in the world is going on? I'm thinking maybe I just have a bad hood latch. Happens, you know. Well, I'm about to pull into the parking lot for work, and all of a sudden my engine just starts making a lot of noises. It's it's rough. I can tell it's misfiring. Something's going on, and then I hear like little tinging, and then like I park and it's idling rough, and I got all these lights on, and then I get the dreaded service ESC light. I didn't know what this was. I didn't know this was a thing until I Googled all of the symptoms, and it came back with the dreaded GMC lifter problem on their V8 engines. If you know nothing about this, apparently this has been going on since their 2014 models and newer. This was a big issue last year with their, what was it, 6.3 liter V8. I have a 5.3 liter V8 that I purchased a year ago this week. I purchased the truck a year ago this week. Paid over $30,000 for this freaking truck, and I did not expect this. So I thought it might be okay if it's just a hood latch. I can get home, blah blah blah. I'm driving home and this thing's going crazy. No more hood latch issue, but I still got the service ESC. It says I need to service the parking brake. Traction control lights on. I limped home. Like, I didn't take the freeway. It took me about twice as long to get home. And I started looking into my truck because I started freaking out actually. Because lifter issues is not a cheap fix if you don't have a warranty. So lifters I'm not a big mechanic in terms of car mechanic. I can fix a lot of other stuff, but when it comes to car engines, I'm not an expert. So from what I'm reading, it has to do with, it's attached to the camshaft, if I'm not mistaken. Apparently this is a notorious issue with GMC vehicles. Trucks and SUVs with their V8, naturally aspirated V8 engines, pretty much from 2014 and newer. I did not know this when I bought the truck. I had a 2016, no issues with the lifters. Had issues with all the other stuff like brakes going out and stuff like that. I think I probably put 15 grand into that truck, not including the payments. When it was all said and done, it was, but then I did some more research into the lifter issues, and I'm finding it's rampant. They're only saying, GM is saying it's only like 1 to 3%. Maybe I don't know, maybe globally, but I'm reading a lot of people that are having these problems, and a lot of it happens just outside the warranty that GM gives. So GM typically gives like a 5-year, 100,000 mile powertrain warranty. Yeah, so my truck is 6 years old, under 100,000 miles, so I don't fit under the GMC warranty by a year, which sucks. Actually by 2 years. It was 5 times, 5 plus 9 is 24. So by 2 years, but I'm still on, it's whatever comes first. That's how it works. So it sucks that way. So then I'm freaking out because I can't afford, you guys have seen some of my other videos. I can't afford a massive repair on a truck that I'm making pretty big payments on. So especially with expensive as everything is, and then I missed I told the story about how I missed a week of work because I was sick, and then they decided to tell me, oh yeah, you're not going to get your benefits for 6 months. This was not anywhere in my work contract. So that's a whole nother idea. That's a whole nother story. So I'm missing a whole week of income. So I can't afford. So I'm freaking out. I mean, when I tell you I was stressed out for I would say good 24 hours. Um, yeah, it's an understatement because I was so stressed out that I kept waking up in my sleep. I kept dreaming about it. I kept waking up, had like nightmares. Um, so then that affected my sleep, and then the stress apparently got to me, and then I threw up this morning. Um, it's my body's go-to for when I get way too stressed. It's the fight or flight. My body's like, yep, nope, time to throw up. So I dealt with this a long time ago, right before the recession when I knew I was losing my job. I was working at a GM supplier. I was working at Delphi, and I worked there for 2 years, and then they decided to lay us off. Thankfully, it was a union job, and that was the only benefit I ever saw was I got a nice severance package and things like that. But there was, it was most people don't get laid off ever. At least older generations I've talked to, they've rarely ever been laid off. I've been laid off like 4 times, like plant closures, like not like, oh, we're just letting you go because you're a POS or whatever. Like, no, like the building is shutting down, like we're closing this business. I've dealt with more of that in my lifetime than probably a handful of older people have combined. so, so yeah, this was the first time, and I was stressing out, and so I think I was never properly diagnosed because I hate going to the doctor, but like I was puking up blood and stuff like that. So, I don't want to get too graphic for some of you sensitive folk. So I'm pretty sure I was pretty much told like, yeah, it sounds like you have an ulcer. You need to lower your stress. It's like, well, it's not really up to me, is it? I guess the way I respond to stress is one thing, but everybody's wired a little differently. Mentally, I feel like I can handle it because I was in the military. I was in the Air Force, um, and it's crazy because when it comes to like some scary stuff, I'm good. Like I don't freak out. Like for instance, I've been in some pretty bad storms. Um, some could be considered almost life threatening. I've been in some pretty shady situations with some shady people, where like I used to do a lot of street work, working with the homeless in the dark, and there was a crackhead one time that tried to assault some of our females and got a little crazy. But in those moments, I don't stress out. I don't freak out. I go into a different mode, and I thrive. Like I thrive in those situations. When it comes to situations like money, finance, and stuff like that, my brain freaks out. My body freaks out. I go to worst case scenario, like it's DEFCON 5, and it's life's over. So, so yeah, didn't get much sleep. Got sick this morning. My stomach's been in shambles all day. And I had to call into work because I don't want to just keep driving my truck. So the big thing they say is you really shouldn't be driving your truck if you suspect a lifter issue, because you could eventually damage the camshafts, and things like that. And I don't want to do that. So I was hoping to get in somewhere today and get it checked out. Nobody had openings. The closest opening was tomorrow morning. But then I started digging. I was able to find the USB drive that came with my truck with all my paperwork. And then I remembered, oh, I thought they had a warranty program. So I went on the website. Sure enough, they have a warranty program. And I'm like, I gotta qualify for this. This was not a cheap truck. And I remember vividly that I turned down the extended warranty because they said that they were offering a warranty free of charge. I remember this in the back of my head. I'm like, now I just need proof. So I went through the paperwork. First time I missed it. I'm like, oh man. And this was last night. I was freaking out. I'm like, oh man. And then this morning, I went back through the paperwork, went through a lot slower, and I found where it says I do have a 2-year warranty. I'm just 1 year in, and I've only put on 6,000 miles in 1 year, which is considered low miles. So, I actually had contacted my dealership, my dealership yesterday, or at least one of their branches that's closest to me. And I said, hey, I want to get this thing serviced. I'm pretty sure I have a warranty and blah, blah, blah. Gave them like the last 4 digits of my VIN, my name, phone. They're like, we'll call you back. Never call me back. That was at like 2 o'clock as I was driving home. So it was like 1:45 to 2 o'clock is when I called them. And they're not supposed to close till like 8. So then they never called. So like 6 o'clock rolls around. I decided to give them another call. Like, hey, I called at like 2. I still haven't gotten a phone call. And they're like, oh, service department's already gone. They close at 5:30. Okay. Well, what am I supposed to do? Like, this is kind of an emergency. So she took my information again and said, oh, they'll call you in the morning. Morning came, still no phone call. Who I did get a call from was a dealer that I didn't buy from that's closer, and they were like, hey, we could get you in at 7:30. And then, so I had it set. I was like, let's put it in there. And then I'm going to just do some more research. So I did more research, found out that I had the warranty, found out I qualified for their other warranty. And then I contacted their corporate office because I was not happy. No one was calling me back. So somebody from corporate actually emailed me, and then another person from corporate called me and said, hey, we don't like the fact that you feel like you're being neglected, especially because this is my second car I bought from them. And this was not a cheap truck. And I had issues with a person at their dealership when I was buying this truck. So there were some issues, and I'm like, listen, like, this is what you guys are advertising. I have paperwork, blah, blah, blah. So she calls me back. She's like, yeah, she's like, we'll look into this. She's like, I'm going to call the service manager directly. Apparently the service manager wasn't at the dealership. He was actually in some meetings or something at the corporate office. Which doesn't really, I mean, that's for him, but to not have his service advisors not call me, not happy. Especially when I'm taking time off work and I don't have the time off. So I'm losing money, even more money, and looking even worse and worse. So, so he actually ends up calling me back on his drive home, or drive to his dealership, and said, hey, like, what's going on? Oh, here's the crazy part. So the lady that calls me from the corporate office, she's like, so what's going on with your truck? And I'm like, well, I think I have a lifter issue on my truck, that dreaded lifter issue. She's like, and then she starts rattling off symptoms. I'm like, yeah, like, I have all of those. She's like, oh no. So clearly they must have experienced this before. And from what I read online, there are so many dealerships that talk about how they already know, like, this is, they have to still confirm stuff, but they pretty much know, like, this is going to be the lifter issue. And unfortunately, GM and Chevrolet, Chevrolet is owned by GM, they refuse to do a nationwide recall because it doesn't put the driver or the owner of the car in a dangerous situation, because the car doesn't just stop driving. This doesn't just stop on the freeway. You're able to limp the car so you can get to safety. So that's their basis for not issuing a recall. But then they're forcing all these people that have massive loans for these overinflated cars. Because trust me, my car shouldn't have been worth more than $25,000. So I paid at least $5,000 more, but that's because of the overinflated pricing. Everybody a year ago was charging an arm and a leg, and I needed a newer car. So so all these people are buying these cars, and we all have inflated loans and stuff like that, and they're refusing to cover any of these issues. So they said that if you really ask and kind of beg GM, they might offer like some assistance. They said anywhere from like 50 to 80% to help with the bill. I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. This isn't my problem. I've drove 6,000 miles in a year. I babied this thing. I've done the necessary oil changes through a GM dealer. Like, I've done everything I'm supposed to. I don't drive this thing rough. I don't use this thing to plow. I don't go off roading. I don't, like, I've towed an occasional trailer here and there with a few 100 pounds of stuff, but I'm not like hauling cars and hauling tractors and stuff with this thing. So, and I was just driving on the freeway, like, with other traffic. I wasn't doing anything crazy. It wasn't even wet. There was nothing. It was just, I don't know. So the fact that GM doesn't want to do a recall and is forcing its customers to spend thousands of dollars, because this is not a cheap fix. So if on the low end it's like $1,000, on the high end it's like 8,000. If it's so bad that you need a new engine, you're looking at like 12 grand. And GM doesn't want to cover most of it if it's outside of the warranty, which for a lot of customers it is outside of the warranty, because once again this goes back to 2014 trucks and SUVs. So, but luckily I have the warranty. I'm hoping it covers this, because if it doesn't, I can't afford to fix this truck, and I'm probably going to have to file for bankruptcy. And it's probably going to ruin my food truck business, because I wouldn't be able to afford to start my food truck. It would get delayed at least a few months, and by that time I've already lost thousands of dollars, and then I would miss the best part of the season, the beginning almost third of the season. So and then my reputation would be ruined with the truck and stuff like that. So it's just, and then I have a contract for the truck, things like that, expenses. So yeah. So I don't know. Have any of you guys have GMC trucks and SUVs that have dealt with this problem? Were you able to get it rectified? Especially if it was not under warranty. If it was just outside of warranty, were you able to get some help? Were you able to get assistance? Did the dealership help you? I'm really hoping that the dealership works with me. I think the fact that I put up a pretty big stink when I was buying the truck because of how I was being treated. There was some deception going on, things like that. And I kind of called them out on it and went to the corporate office. And so I don't know if they're just like, dude, this guy's going to make our lives a living hell if we don't help him. So we'll see what happens. I have to call. I've already taken off work again for tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to have a job by the end of the week. It sucks. So right now they're working on, they said the earliest they can get me in for sure is Monday morning, which really sucks. But they said if I drop it off early, so if I come drop it off tomorrow, they would be able to try to slip my truck in for diagnostics, and then get to work on, getting on the warranty work and seeing what's going to cover, and then a time frame. But the big thing they're working on is trying to see if I can get a loaner, because there's no way I can go a week without working, without that pay, without I'm just stuck at the house. Unless somebody wants to just give me like $100 grand for doing that, like a lot of memes on Facebook. So that's what I've got. So for those of you that have dealt with this, how did you guys rectify it? Did you guys end up changing out? Because apparently this has to do with the fuel system. I'm looking online here. Yeah, it has to do with either the active fuel management, AFM, or dynamic fuel management, DFM. And so they said these systems can cause lifters to stick or collapse, resulting in engine ticking, misfires, and significant potential for camshaft damage. Which leads me back to why GM won't do this as a recall. If it's significant potential for camshaft damage and that's while you're driving, that's dangerous. That's potential, which means that they've evaluated and said, oh, if we lose a couple people, it's okay. So there's actually a couple of class action lawsuits in the works because of this, because people are pissed off, and rightfully so. I mean, everything that I've read, it's anywhere from like I said, $1,000 on the cheap end, which it's never going to be on the cheap end, to $8,000. Some people have completely had to replace their engines. I can't afford that. I don't have 12 grand lying around. I don't have 8 grand lying. I don't have 2 grand lying around. Like, come on. So if this has happened to you, let me know. Leave a comment, message me. Let me know how you got through it. That's all I got. Nothing about the business today. That's all bad news about the truck. And like I said, if I didn't have bad luck, I wouldn't have luck at all. So I just feel like my life is cursed sometimes. This is clear evidence of that. I would just love it if I could just get a break in my life and finally some good things start happening. I'm not a bad person. I don't know what I deserved for all this negativity in my life. So I don't know. I can only hope for that my life improves and that maybe this is the start of it. I hope so. Yeah, I hope you guys have a much better day than I've had. Yeah, just let me know, what you guys have dealt with. So I'll see you guys soon.